And yeah, so welcome everyone to how your core destructive belief is sabotaging every aspect of your life. And what you can do about it. So this is not a gloom and doom webinar by any means, quite the opposite. In fact, I hope by the end of this you actually feel empowered. And not only that, I hope that you see or you gain a better understanding of what's going on beneath the surface of you. So when I look around me and I work with many, many people in many different fields, but the interesting thing is I see the one problem playing out over and over again. And this problem is it's basically what stops us reaching our potential. It stops us fulfilling our goals. It stops us from ever finding out how great we can be. And I can sum this problem up in just one word: inaction. It's a failure to take action. And if we can crack the code of this, if we can work out why is it that I can't take action, I know what I need to do, or maybe I don't know what I need to do, but regardless, there's something in me that stops me taking a step ahead. It's almost like I've got 1 foot on the accelerator and 1 foot on the brake, and all you can smell is the burning rubber on the road. You know, that's the smell of inaction. Why is that? What I know is that when you don't know what to do, action is impossible. You get stuck. And for some of us, we get caught in that position of being stuck for so long that it almost feels like we're a deer in the headlights. And at that point, we can start to lose faith in ourselves. At that point, self-doubt can become so strong that it's actually debilitating. And we even find it hard to get out of bed in the morning. And I've worked with plenty of people who are in that space. So we have to go, okay, what's going on here? Okay, we know we can't take action and it's causing us no end of frustration. Well, why is that? Well, we can't take action when we can't make decisions. You can't take action when you can't make a decision. And then we ask, well, then why can't I make a decision? What's behind that? Well, when you can't think clearly, you can't make decisions, and then you can't take action. So it's this inability to think clearly. So if you like, it's actually something that's going on inside of us. And this can be a very hard pill to swallow. So how do I know all of this? How can I talk about this with such conviction? Well, I can tell you, I haven't read about it in books. It's not that I've watched it in movies and I haven't learned it in a program. How I know all of this is because I've been there. And I've spent a long time in a space where not only could I not take action, but I could stare at my inbox for a whole day, click open an email, and not actually be able to read it. My daughter once asked me, Mum, we were running a business together at this point. She said, Mum, choose the color of a brochure. Do you want blue or green? And I could not decide. The synapses were simply not firing. So how did I get to this place? Well, let me share my story with you so you can understand the journey that I've been on, and possibly it's a journey that you might relate to as well. So I'm a real product of the 80s, and the mantra in the 80s, I don't know if any of you guys remember, was the harder I work, the more money I'll make, and the more money I make, the happier I'll be. Kind of made sense, we thought. And so accordingly, I became like this serial entrepreneur. You know, I just went, I'm going to stay as busy as I can and be as productive as I can and make as much money as I can. So over the space of around 30 years, I managed 2 restaurants, not 1, but 2. I set up an advertising agency in Sydney, Australia, created lots of campaigns that are well known, then got into real estate, bought, renovated and sold 117 properties, and then did a $23 million land development. And as if that wasn't enough, even when I was at my lowest end, I thought, well, just because, you know, I can, I will. And I launched into a wedding business. Now, I'm not sharing this with you as some kind of crazy brag list, and not at all. It's just to show you how all over the place I was and how this belief led me to my eventual undoing. But before we get there, Actually, I did arrive at the day when I had everything I thought I wanted. So picture this. We had this amazing waterfront mansion, private beach next door in Australia's beautiful Whitsundays that we created. Fabulous place. I had my family, 3 beautiful daughters. I had a solid marriage, and we had money in the bank. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, life doesn't get any better than that. But I'll never forget the day I was sitting in a kayak looking at everything that we owned, this grand estate, which was beautiful. It was a really beautiful place in this beautiful location. But instead of feeling the promised happiness, all I felt was emptiness. And I had a sudden realization of, oh my God, I've spent my whole life climbing this mountain only to reach the top and realize it's the wrong one. But because I didn't take action, the universe took it for me. And over the next 12 months would deliver the 2008 global financial crisis. And I don't know if you recall that, but over those 12 months, I just watched as everything that we'd worked so hard for started to disappear. And because my sense of self-worth was caught up entirely in our net worth, it was like I was watching myself disappear, you know, to the point where it was like a finger was being chopped off every day till there was virtually none of me left. And I remember hearing on the radio about this, you know, multi-billionaire who too had lost his fortune, and how he dealt with it was throwing himself in front of a train. And instead of feeling compassion or, you know, sympathy even for him, I was just obsessed by one thought: if only that was me. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to that ground zero point, but I believe if you have, or when you do get there, or if you get there, death actually is not an option. It's which type of death do you choose? You know, physical death, where you just check out and then you leave all your suffering behind for your loved ones, or metaphysical death, where you have to let go of something. You have to take on a new world view. So what I had to do was challenge this whole belief and ask myself, well, if money isn't the key to happiness, what the hell is? And this is where I went on my own personal search for what I felt were life's most urgent questions. Firstly, who am I? Because I realized I had no idea. And then, what do I really want? Because clearly I thought I wanted the mansion and all the success and the social kudos that goes with that, but clearly that didn't fulfill me. And I guess that led to the even larger question that I believe all of us must face at some point, which is, why am I here? So I went on I became like one of those classic, you know, workshop junkies. I travel all around the world, going to all these seminars, listening to these gurus, paying what money we had left to hear the top speakers. And what I realized was that not one person had all the answers that I was looking for. But finally, I did get an insight, which was one of those life-changing moments. And I was at a Face Your Fears boot camp in the Malaysian jungle. It was one of those boot camps, you know, where they have you jumping out of trees and suspended off wires and things. And one of the exercises that we did was to go through a simulated death experience. So there I was. There was a guy coming towards me with his hands outstretched, about to squeeze my carotid artery till I passed out. And I remember thinking, actually, I wasn't scared at that point. I was actually more curious, because I was really searching at this point. I just wanted to find some answer. And I thought, well, you know, will this be it? Will I see the light at the end of the tunnel? You know, will I feel that euphoria? Will my life flash before me? But instead, all I heard was a voice. And the voice said, "Janet, you've let everyone down." And as I came to, I was just overcome by this tidal wave of grief and disappointment. And then that quickly was replaced by outrage. You know, how dare this wet sock of a line be the summation of my entire life? And then as the anger died down, the truth started to emerge. And I realized, yeah, of course I'd let everyone down, and no one more so than myself, because in being what I thought was selfless, I was actually being selfish. And I was denying the world who I really was and my gift. Now, I didn't know what my gift was at that point, but all I knew was that there was a part of me that I kept buried, and that was the wrong thing to do. And that I had to somehow release that part of me, just like you have to find out what that part of you is that's not showing up at the moment, and release that part of you. I started to realize in that one moment that the greatest betrayal of all is the betrayal of the self. And that was that huge wave of disappointment I felt. And so what I did, I put together the program that I wish someone had put together for me, you know, like a rope ladder that they could have thrown me when I was at the bottom of my mine shaft. And my whole thinking behind this was, I never want to hear that line again. When I'm on my actual deathbed, I do not want to hear that voice, Janet, you've let everyone down. And also, knowing the pain of that, I don't want anyone else to hear that line. I don't want you guys to hear that line. And that's why I do what I do. So that's my story. What about you? So how are you coping with this crisis that we find ourselves in, this bizarre situation? How has it impacted on you personally? Let's forget about, you know, business and all of that for now, but how is it impacting on you personally? Because this is what we have to start looking at. So, are you feeling stressed? Is that stress causing you to lose sleep at night? I know me, when I was going through this in 2008, I was up at 2 a.m. every morning checking the US stock exchange until I didn't know what a good night's sleep was for about 12 months. Or is it showing up in other ways? Is it leading to destructive behaviors? You know, I'm talking to a lot of people who are dealing with their stress by having, you know, 1 drink or 10 after work. And of course, what happens when we do that, when we start to embark on those destructive behaviors, we take it out on the loved ones, don't we? You know, our partners, even our children. And what happens in this position is we start to isolate ourselves. We start to pull back. And this is the danger. This is the dark space. This is where we are at risk of reaching that ground zero point unless we do something about it, unless we go, okay, what is this all about? Are you seeing that there's a gap between how you're showing up right now and the way you need to be? Because you know that there's a better version of you out there. But what is that person? What do they look like? And I know this place where I just said to myself, I just want all my problems to go away. If someone could have stepped in and taken this huge, it felt like 2 cement bags on my shoulders, if they could have just lifted those off and said, Janet, you just do what you want to. If that means checking out permanently, do that. I was very close to taking that option. That's how bad it can get. But what if there were a way to do just that? What if there were a way to actually take those cement bags on your shoulders off so that you could actually operate? So you could come from a place where you could finally resolve what was going on for you internally so that all those external problems became not problems, but just challenges. And as challenges, things that you go, yeah, I can deal with that. This isn't bigger than me. This is not going to overwhelm me. I can walk through this space and come out the other side feeling better than ever. What if that were possible? So, are you ready for some good news? Well, the good news is this. There is now a new step-by-step process to get you from wherever it is that you are now in this place of, let's say, feeling stuck, to where you can think clearly. Remember, that's key, getting your mind in the right place, getting that mindset working for you, not against you. So where you can think clearly, make sound decisions, and take action. And so that you can get to being the leader that your team needs you to be. Because there's a leader in there that's currently not showing up as they need to show up. And not just now, but over the next 10 years, I believe the world is going to need every one of us to step up and be that bigger person. We don't know the challenges that we're about to face. And so there is a need now like never before to become that bigger person. So do you want to hear some even better news? Because I know some of you might be thinking, yeah, but I don't like therapy. I don't have, thousands and thousands of dollars to spend. I certainly don't have time to waste. I know, I've been in that space, and I'm not talking about any of that. The even better news is that you can get to this place. You can have a major shift, and it won't take you months or years. It took me like 8 years to sort all this out. It doesn't have to take you that long. You can actually start to turn your life around in weeks, even days. And that, I have to say, is a brilliant piece of news, because if I'd known that 10 years ago, that would have absolutely turned my life around. But I had to go on that journey, and probably if I hadn't gone on that journey, I wouldn't have come up with this program. So it's being able to get to that place where we can look back on our life with no regrets. And how important is that when we actually come to the real end of our life, to be able to look back with no regrets? So would you like to start now? Why not? Let's do it. Let's actually get a taste of what this journey really feels like. It begins, step one, is you need to understand what's going on. How many of you end up in the blame game where you're blaming yourself for everything, feeling guilty, going, this is all my fault. If I hadn't done this and this and this, I wouldn't be in this place. I used to lie in bed going over that all the time. It's called ruminating, and it drives you crazy. So let's get to the bottom of this. So at least from this call, you might stop doing that. Okay, so I'm going to take you through my 5-door model so that you can establish where you are right now. That's important, right? We need to actually find out, get a clear idea of where am I situated right now? Because I had no idea. I thought my life was great until it went pear-shaped. Well, until that day that I had everything I thought I wanted, and I realized in hindsight how lucky I was to get to that place. But I didn't stay there, that's for sure. I went to a very dark place. And then secondly, what I'd like to give you is an understanding of the real reason you're feeling stuck. And I hope from this that you get a sense of, actually, it's not my fault. In fact, this is almost what everyone has to go through. There's a sense of this being a universal journey. And then finally, your crazy loop and how you can break it. So let's begin with the 5-door model. And what I'd like you to do is think of an issue that's your big issue right now. It might be around money and cash flow. If you're in business, it might be keeping your business afloat. It might be around relationships. It might be around your health. It might just be around your quality of life, just a feeling of you're not happy. So just thinking of whichever you feel is the biggest issue in your life right now. I'm going to take you through 5 doors. I'm going to describe each one, and I want you to identify which door you're currently living behind, okay? In the context of this, the biggest issue in your life right now. Okay, so we're going to go to the bleakest one first, because we are all powerful people. And so we have to confront our worst case scenario. If we run away from it, I know from experience, it will chase us. We cannot outrun our shadow, right? So this is, if you like, our shadow or our dark side, and I call it living hell. So whatever that means for you, it might be, going bankrupt. It might be losing a loved one. It might show up in a different way, like chronic anxiety or depression. So what is living hell for you? And just think about when you might have been there. Maybe you're here right now. So that's doorway 1. Door 2 is what I call the life of compliance, treadmill. It's just as it sounds, where you haven't taken any risk. You've just bought everything that you've been told. You've bought into that. And you've basically haven't taken any risk, haven't broken any rules, and you just take life as it comes. But it starts to feel a little bit like Groundhog Day, the same routine over and over and over again. How many people are in this space? And then there's fortunately 3 more doors. So door 3 is where you actually decide to break away. And you go, you know what? I'm not going to be like everyone else. I'm going to start up my own business. I'm going to take charge of my life. It might show up as moving countries, but doing some brave, bold move. Except instead of feeling like a staircase to heaven, it's more like the roller coaster and it feels like there are more downs than ups. In fact, in this place, it can even feel like you're in quicksand and you're being sucked into that quicksand and you don't know how to get out of it. That's door 3. Then door 4, I call pipe dream. And pipe dream speaks to those opium dens, remember, when people would sit around smoking opium in a kind of a delusional state. You know, they were seeking paradise. And so paradise for our society has typically been, you know, the millionaire lifestyle, or at least the big house, you know, all the material assets, all of that. But the interesting thing is when we get to this door 4 called pipe dream and we have everything that we think we want, my observation of the people I work with is that there's always a sense of something missing. And what is that all about? And I know from my own experience, just because you got to door 4 doesn't mean you're going to stay there. And it's no guarantee. It's not like a set of stairs where you've made it this far and you're not going backwards. I've been in door 4 and gone right back to doorway 1. So there's, and in most of those other doors too. So there's no guarantee. Door 4 comes with no guarantee. And we're seeing it right now, how people who thought they were well set up have lost nearly everything and they're struggling to know what to do next. Now, why I'm here is to tell you that there is another option. And that other option is what I call the 5th door. So what does that actually mean, the 5th door, this mysterious place that some of us may gain entry to? Well, I believe everyone has the right to cross the threshold into the 5th door. It's just that we haven't been shown how. And so this is the formula for crossing that threshold into the 5th door. It's very simple. So we just have to, from a position of really knowing who we are and understanding who we are, okay? So that's a given. That's quite a big assumption because that's the first piece to really, you really need to know who you are to be able to answer that question. I know me. I have a sense of who I am. So knowing who you are, then isolating what it is that you really love to do. Now I know when I was in doorway 4, someone once said to me, Janet, what do you love doing? And he gave me a blank piece of paper. This was a business coach. And I looked at it and I burst into tears because I had no idea. So we have to isolate, what is it that we love to do? Next thing, we have to go, yeah, but it can't just be what I love to do, or what lights me up. It also has to be something that I have some aptitude for, a natural aptitude for, you know, that I'm good at. And then finally, the final piece is, and how does it solve a problem for others? And this is where we get into a whole new space. And I believe this is really the essence of 5th door thinking, which is it's no longer about me and it's about meaning. We go from me to meaning. How do I give my life meaning? How do I commit to something that's actually bigger than me, that fills my heart and makes me feel like a valuable person on this planet? I don't have to be changing the world, but I have to be showing up as me, doing what I love and making some kind of difference. It can be very small, doesn't have to be big. So why is it so important to get all 3 together? Well, what happens if it's just something that we love and something that we're good at? I mean, what's that? It's really, basically, it's just a hobby, isn't it? You know, and a lot of us can stay stuck in that place. You know, I talk to people who say, oh yeah, I'm doing astrology and I read people's charts. I don't charge any money or anything. That's kind of just a hobby, okay? What if you're doing something, what if there's something that you love and you know that there's a demand for it? You know, like, I don't know, for instance, I like playing tennis. And I know that, you know, those really good tennis players out there make good money. They can make a living from it. The only problem is my missing piece is I'm not very good at it. So I'd never be a champion. So for me, if that's what I wanted to do, that stays a dream, right? It's not real. I might just sit and dream about it. And then the final piece, what if you're good at something and it's solving a problem, so you're getting paid, but there's no real joy in it for you. It's just something that you've done for many years and you've been in this space and you're kind of good at it. You can almost do it with your eyes closed. What do we call that? Well, it's a job or a profession or a career. And how many people are in that space? But what if we could get the trifecta, all three, all together? Then that's what I call your sweet spot. And that's what we're going for. It's a lot harder than you think, particularly to do it on your own, let me tell you. It's a lot harder than you think. But the good news is there is a process for this now. And it involves a lot of unlearning what we might have misbeliefs that we picked up around ourselves at school, typically. So there's a lot of unlearning in this process. But that's where we're going for. So just looking at these doors, living hell, treadmill, roller coaster, and pipe dream, and then finally the sweet spot, just write down what door you feel you're behind. Applying the big issue in your life right now. Where are you right now? And so just think about that and think about where you could go from that place. If you're already in door 5, that's fantastic. But if you're not, then think about where you could go from this place. And also think about the consequence of not taking action, because I know personally from that when we don't take action, we inevitably spend some time behind door 1. All right. So what's my mission? I'm here to help entrepreneurs, business owners, anyone who has a feeling of my life could be bigger, remove the blocks that have been keeping them stuck so that they can enjoy financial freedom and a working life that truly fulfills them. So my belief is that enjoying what you do, getting genuine fulfillment from it, and being paid so that you're no longer having to worry about money are not mutually exclusive. See, this was the lie, the belief that I followed that wasn't true, that you had to have money first and then happiness followed. It never works that way. Actually, we have to put happiness first, the pursuit of that, and then have money as a byproduct so that you truly can have a living that you love. That's the goal. So why is it we find it so hard to make the right decisions and take action? And this is the next piece that I really want you to start understanding. And hopefully this may allay any guilt that you're feeling about yourself not having done more with your life to this point. So let's look at what I'm seeing in the outside world right now. A growing pandemic of not so much corona, a virus that's different from corona, and you're probably seeing it around family and friends. A lot of stress. People are not knowing how to deal with the uncertainty. Anxiety, not able to deal with the unknown factor of the future. You know, will I still have a job? Will I still have a business? What's going to become of me? When it becomes chronic, it can go into depression, which is a very black state. It's a disease. It becomes like a disease where we can lie in bed and simply not be able to drag our body out of bed. And we all know people in that place. Insomnia. And so it was insomnia that led me to post-traumatic stress disorder, where I could sit in the office and not make a decision. I was actually just sleep deprived. And it took me months to get over that. Addiction, not just the obvious addiction to alcohol or drugs, but addiction to work. And if you continue to work with me, we look at the addiction that's underneath all of those, the addiction to our feelings, addiction to shame and guilt, funnily enough. And of course, this puts stress on our relationships, and it can even show up as chronic disease. You know, it can show up as high blood pressure, pains and aches, etc. So where does all of this come from? Well, let's just do a little bit of Psychology 101. Failure to take action has little to do with what we think it has to do with. So right now we might be going, I'm so stuck because I'm in lockdown, or I'm so stuck because of the virus, or I'm so stuck because I don't have enough money right now, or I'm so stuck because I'm frightened of losing my job. These are symptoms, right? These are symptoms, and they're very real, but they're not the cause. And these symptoms have been inflamed by the current situation, but they were always waiting to emerge, always there beneath the surface. It just took some additional pressure for you to be really aware of them. The good news is that the cause is actually within us. Why is that good news? Because imagine if the answer to inaction relied on someone else. What if it relied on a politician, heaven forbid, or something that was beyond your control? The good news is that the answer to this conundrum, this situation that we find ourselves, is within us. And it always has been. Anything that hasn't worked out in your life, you can always trace back to something within you. So let's look at the real source. I'm just going to go over this in a way to give you an overview type of understanding. So this is true for every one of us. And I find that up to this point, when people talk about childhood wounds or trauma, there's a degree of shame around it. What's interesting is there's a new appetite for inner work. And now people are starting to understand that this is something every single one of us actually experiences. We all have something that happened in our life that caused a shock. And typically it's between the ages of 0 and 7. And that shock, because we were so young and it was so unfamiliar to us, it could have been even just a dark look from a parent, or, just mum's not having enough time to pick you up. I've worked with people and that's been their big shock. Or it could be huge, it could be some type of abuse. There are different types of shock. But the thing to understand is it's not what happens to us, but it's the emotion that shock triggers. And what it triggers is a negative emotion, and it's usually around shame and guilt, because the young child always takes the blame. I can't think of a situation where it was actually the young child's fault, but we don't know that. We do know, though, if we point the finger at a parent or an older sibling who's been bullying us or worse, that our whole life could collapse. Our whole safety net collapses beneath us, because as a child, we're not seeking love so much as safety. And so we will do anything to keep ourselves safe. The problem with that is that when we look at our adult life, if we haven't addressed this childhood wound, it starts crying and screaming at us until we do. And how does it scream at us? In all these types of negative outcomes, financial loss, divorce, illness, stress, anxiety, and so the list goes on. So what is behind these? Why do we make these crazy decisions? Well, I know in my own life, the worst decisions I've made are all because of one word, what I call the 4-letter F word, fear. And what I realized as I started working with people to help them solve the puzzle of themselves, that so many people could see where they were gifted, but they failed to take action. And I got to the point where I went, why am I even bothering to do this if I can give people clarity on their path, but then they don't do anything with it? So for me, my obsession became to solve this piece in the middle. What is the thing between this shame that we feel and the fear that stops us from taking action and making crazy decisions? What's that about? So here's what I discovered. The average person has 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day. That's not the startling figure. The startling figure is 80% of those are negative, but that's not the really startling fact. The really startling fact that of those 80%, or say roughly up to 48,000 thoughts, all of those thoughts are coming back to one thought. 95% of those are repeating the same thought or one of its offspring. Just think about that. What if we could isolate what that one thought is? How would that change everything? So this thought, if you like, this is the one core reason why most people will never fulfill their true potential, why most of us constantly sabotage ourselves and stop us taking that action that we need to take to turn our lives around. This I call the mental termite. It's just like a termite. And imagine you're this beautiful house made of timber and it's eaten out all your foundations. And so you can't take action because the part of you that needs to take action has been absolutely disabled. And I have a name for this mental termite. I call it your core destructive belief. How do I know that this is the thing that we have to unearth in ourselves? How do I know this? Well, this core destructive belief is the real reason your life may suck right now. And how I know this is because I realized I was in a crazy loop. And as I go through this, I want you to just see if you can identify a pattern in your behavior. All right, so I'll share my story with the aim of helping you to see what your story might be, because part of this is just starting to see patterns. All right, so it begins with a crime. So as a child, something happened to us. It felt like a crime committed against us that turned our world upside down. And probably many people don't even remember what this is. It can be a tiny event. So for me, it was when I was 4 years old. I was a very precious and probably precocious only child. And I never forget the day I saw my parents coming home with this bundle. And they walked through the door, and I just remembered all the eyes of the room going from me to this bundle, and it turned out to be my baby sister. Now, so that was one shock. And then to make it worse, she had chronic colic. So she would scream every day, 24 hours, to the point where my mum would turn on the lawnmower to drown out the sound. I thought, this is clearly terrible. We have to do something. I thought they'd bought her from a shop. So there we were at a department store 6 weeks later, and I noticed on the appliances all these price tags. So I carefully unpeeled a whole bunch of them and stuck them on my sister's forehead, hoping someone would buy her. Anyway, when we got home, my mom just let loose. She said, I won't do her voice, right? But you naughty, naughty girl. She pulled out the wooden spoon. I still can see that wooden spoon in that drawer. She chased me to the house. She smacked me on the bottom and sent me to my room. That was my prison. And I remember sitting there just in this cloud of negative emotion. I didn't know it was shame. I didn't have a name for it. All I knew that I felt terrible. And it wasn't from being smacked on the bottom. It was how I felt inside. Something had been broken inside. So what happens? Now this is the key. This is the key. Because when we're young, we cannot process this emotion. It's too much for us. What we do is a part of us cloaks it in a belief to try and protect us. So it's a belief that makes us feel that we fit in, that we fit into our tribe, because we're frightened of rejection, right? That would make us feel unsafe. We couldn't survive on our own. So this is what I call the core destructive belief. And it's like a mental tattoo. You're not aware of it, but it's there and it's driving all your behavior. And so mine was, I'm a naughty girl. I still hear my mum's words ringing in my ears. And so when every time this belief got triggered, it in turn triggered the thing that I was most scared of, that I associated with this terrible emotion. And that's our fear. So the belief triggers the fear. So my fear was getting into trouble. So think about what your core fear is. And if you don't know what it is, you do need to find this out. Because without knowing, the same behavior patterns are going to keep on playing out over and over again. This fear is so intense in us that we do everything to allay it. So what happens is it's almost like we try to create a right from two wrongs, okay? So the core destructive belief isn't actually true. It's not our identity, but we think it's us. And so we try to assume a new identity, which I call the overcompensating self. And this creates another prison for us. So I went from being the naughty girl to the nice girl, nothing nice standing for nothing inside me cares enough. And so that little inner spark went out and I just became the good girl. So at school, I would work really hard so I didn't get into trouble from the teachers. I even became the milk monitor, all this stuff to prove that I wasn't naughty. Okay, so think about that in your situation. That it's like there's an emotional tug of war between two identities, and you might not be clear on what they are yet, but if you're feeling unsettled or fragmented or torn, I can tell you that's what's playing out for you. Okay, now the problem with this is that it doesn't just happen once, right? It becomes a programming in us, and it's hardwired. We can't actually unwire it, and we don't even try to, but we do have to bring it to our consciousness. This negative emotion that we feel is just, that they say better the devil you know. It's like, because we know it and we're familiar with it, we seek it out again and again and again, even if it's a dark emotion like shame and guilt. And so to share with you how this played out in my adult life, probably the most dramatic example for me was when I was 2 years into my relationship with my current husband. We've been married 40 years. This was before we were married. And what happens, instead of the crime being perpetrated on us, we become the perpetrators of the crime. And so 2 years into our relationship, I had a one-night stand. And I didn't know what was going on because my partner and I loved each other very much. It was like a really weird thing for me to do. But I do know the very next day, I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, "You piece of shit." When I saw myself, how could you have done that? And all I felt was that shame, right in the pit of my stomach, right in my core being. And so, of course, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that there was this kind of naughty girl, almost temptress persona going on within me. I didn't realize that. All I knew was that I felt like crap, like there was something essentially wrong with me. And because I didn't want to be an essentially wrong person, we go from a sense of self-wrongness to self-righteousness. So what did I do? My husband and I got married. We swept this whole thing under the rug of our marriage. We never talked about it. And instead, I threw myself into being the perfect wife, the perfect mother, and the perfect career woman all at once. It was the 80s. It was when you did everything, right? And that my prison, instead of being my bedroom, was my desk. And I spent 30 years behind that desk, hiding my true self, but feeling I had to do this because I felt so shameful and guilty. And this crazy loop played out over and over and over again. So this is why I'm here talking to you now, because my gift, I realized after many years, I wasn't clear on it initially, my gift, I realized, was to expose and deactivate that inner termite in you, your core destructive belief. Because if you can unearth that, we're not even going to get rid of it, we just tame it, but just in the taming of it, you start to get control back of your life. So here's the interesting thing. When you're in the crazy loop, you can't see it, right? It's like a fish in a fishbowl. He can't see the water that he's swimming in. But what's interesting is the moment you can see it, you're no longer in it. It's a shift that happens like that. And that's why I say you don't have to spend months and years trying to figure out the puzzle that is you. You just have to have a process for identifying this core destructive belief. And let me tell you, you cannot do it on your own. Even if you think you know, people say, I know what my limiting belief is, it's I'm not good enough. Yeah, well, that's a given. That's a generic. We know that. Everyone feels they're not good enough. Why? I'm not good enough because. What are the words that come after because? This is what we have to get to the bottom of. So let's just do a quick recap of what we've covered today so that what you can take away, and this is real food for thought to start, so you can start to see your life from a new perspective. And I'm hoping with a reduced sense of blame and shame around whatever is not working out for you right now. Because how can you make it work if you're not conscious of what's driving you beneath the surface? So looking at the 5-door model, understanding where you're placed right now on that scale, And knowing that you can, if things happen and you don't have inner resilience, you can easily end up, just like I did, living behind doorway one. It has nothing to do with how hard you've worked, the money you've managed to accumulate. It's very easy to find your way back into doorway one. However, I believe that when you cross the threshold into doorway 5, you have the resilience to weather any storm so that whatever happens in your life, you'll be okay, no matter what. And that's where we all need to get to, particularly now. The next 10 years are going to present us with unfathomable challenges. We know it. We're starting to already see what they are beyond Corona. Then the real reason that you're feeling stuck, this is your core destructive belief here. Okay. So this, you have to understand, if things aren't working out for you, it's actually not your fault. You're not to blame. You are operating, in a sense, on autopilot. So how could you expect for things to turn out any other way? All you know is that you get triggered by certain things, but you don't actually know what it is. We don't know the source of the depression, why we can't get out of bed in the morning. All we know is that we're feeling these symptoms, but we don't know where they come from. Okay, and then finally, what are the consequences if you don't find out what your core destructive belief is? And that brings us back to the crazy loop. So, have you identified a problem that needs fixing? If life is absolutely perfect for you right now, and you're absolutely happy with how everything is, and you're loving every day, and you feel so grateful for your life, then you can switch off right now. You probably don't need to go any further. But if it doesn't feel like that, if there is a problem that you feel need fixing, then the question is, what now? Where do we go from here? Armed with this knowledge, with a better understanding of the situation, we have a choice. So here we all are. Let's say that this is present reality. And we know at some point in the future that there'll be a new reality, a future reality that's fine, okay? Let's be optimistic and say that, you know, life, it won't necessarily go back to what it was. I don't think it can. But there will be a new life, a life that's definitely worth living. And that there's some point between there, the present, and the future, where we say, okay, this current crisis is officially over. Let's just say they've found the vaccine, right? This is what we call the survival line. And all of us are just, most of us are aiming just for the survival line. They're just saying, I just have to get through COVID, right? Well, what happens if that's just our objective? And so we just go, you know, I just have to get through COVID. I won't do anything. Now, this is a bit of an illusion. When we don't do anything, we think we're traveling in a straight line. Actually, we're not. We're actually drifting downwards. When we do nothing, when we take no action, if we're in any kind of negative situation, it will never improve. Not taking action is never an answer. Even if you have fear of making a mistake, it's better to do something rather than do nothing. And this is where we find a lot of people are stuck right now. It's what we call a freeze state, just like that deer in the headlights. And if we stay on this line for too long, we're going to get into a state of panic. And we're seeing it with some people. You know, they actually don't know where to go from here. They might have lost their businesses. They've lost everything that they thought was important, but they haven't crossed this threshold of seeing the world from a different perspective. And I know I've been in this place. It's a dreadful place to be. You just want someone to haul you out. And then there are others who actually believe that they're taking action, but it's the wrong action. So it's not strategic action. It's just busy for the sake of being busy, if you like. So maybe, you know, they're watching the news, saying, yeah, I'm involved. I'm seeing what's going on in the world. I'm being responsible. You know, I've got a little bit of cash in the bank. We've got food in the pantry. We're going to get through this. We're going to be okay. They're like the preppers, but essentially this is what we call flight mode. They're actually running away from the big issue. They're not confronting it. And that leaves a very small group, what I call the people on the green line. And these people are in fight mode. And I don't mean fight as in being pugilistic and punching each other, but taking assertive action. And these are the strategic ones. These are people who go, okay, this is where I'm at. I'm going to now look at what I need to do to get where I need to be. They're taking control and making decisions. So in the beginning, when this all started out, we were all kind of in the same place, weren't we? You know, did you feel that? Everyone was kind of in this together. There was almost a sense of camaraderie around it. And then now what's happening as we get into stage 2, and maybe there'll be stage 3 and 4, who knows, we're starting to see the gap widen now. So that the big enemy here, of course, is time. The longer we leave things as they are, the wider that gap goes. So the question you have to ask yourself is, well, when is the best time to act? And clearly it's not tomorrow. It's not about putting it off. If you're on the red line and you wait another 12 months, just going, I'm just going to get through, I'm going to survive, having to get back up to where you need to be will be almost impossible. It'll be much, much harder than now. Even if now feels hard, it doesn't get any easier. So for those who actually do take action, this is where the whole color of the world can change. And at this point, when we do get through this, you know what's going to happen. If you're in business, there's going to be a rush for talent, for sales, there'll be opportunity, they will suddenly present themselves, and you want to be ready for that. You really want to be well positioned. So I'm only saying this to say, understand the cost of inaction, understand it, because sometimes we feel, oh, you know what, it's better if I don't do anything. I might cause harm. Well, you will cause harm if you don't act. So when we say to ourselves, you know, when is the best time to take action? Well, when is the best time to plant a tree? Well, probably 20 years ago, actually, because by now then it would be this wonderful presence on our landscape. It would be giving us shade. It would be a thing of beauty. It might be providing fruit or some kind of sustenance. But if we haven't planted the tree 20 years ago, and there's probably a reason that we didn't, we must plant it now. We have to do this now. There is no time to waste. And there's a beautiful line here that I wanted to share with you. Though no one can go back and make a brand new start, anyone can start from now and make a brand new ending. And that's the thought I'd like to leave you with, because I had the good fortune to experience a false death and experience my ending. And I can't believe what a disappointment it was. And I would never wish on anyone to go through that experience I went through. And so I was so lucky to have seen that and to then have this second chance at life. And what I'm saying to you is that you don't just have a second chance, but your best life, it doesn't matter how old you are, your best life, if you do this inner work, actually lies ahead of you. And if you understand that, when you do finally take your final breath, you'll do so without a trace of regret. It'll be with a sense of a life, having a life worth living, a life that you are glad and grateful to have lived. And how precious is that? And isn't that the reason we're here? To arrive at that point. So, where to from here? If you feel that you are ready to go further, then jump on the phone with me and I can explain what the journey ahead might look like for you. If you're not ready, do not jump on the phone. I don't want to waste your time and I don't want you to waste my time. I'm working with people who are ready to change. And if you feel that that's you, then all you have to do is click the link, book a call, and I can show you what your bright future looks like for you and how you can get there. And let me just leave you with this one final thought. It's a lot easier, it's a lot faster, and it's more permanent than you probably ever thought. And one final thought. I remember the thing that stopped me doing any kind of inner work was I was scared I wouldn't find anything inside, because one of my secondary core beliefs was I am nothing. And let me reassure you that when you do this inner work, you are not nothing, and that there's a lot more to you than you think. And that brings us to the end of our webinar. So I hope you got something useful from that. And we'll just share here in the chat. There we go. If you want to book a call, I'd be happy to talk to you and explore where you could go from here. So I'll leave that with you. Any questions before I switch off? All good? All right. Thanks for coming on board, and maybe I'll see you on the other side. Okay, bye for now.